we always like to point the finger outwards about like maybe different politicians or the climate or different like the global warming, all of these things. We think the problem's out there. And if we look a lot deeper, we can actually see that the root of the problem is on the inside.
Por ejemplo,
Okay, so he's saying that, for example, if I have a cup here, and then when something hits the cup, it makes a sound.
sonido, ¿no? Entonces, dice, vienen dos condiciones.
And there's two conditions that happen in order for the cup to make a sound.
Y taza es de dentro nosotros, ¿ya?
So the cup is on the inside of
Unos
us.
palos que a nosotros eso, ¿ya?
And maybe a stick is coming from the
¿El
outside.
sonido de dónde salió?
And where does the sound come from?
Puede ser taza o puede ser palo.
Does it come from the cup or does it come from the stick?
No puede ser ninguno, ¿no?
It doesn't come from either.
Pero taza tiene potencial para hacer la sonido.
It is the cup that has the potential to make the sound.
Y palo no puede hacer sonido solo, ¿no?
And the stick cannot make a sound by itself.
Pero taza nace de un sonido, ¿cierto?
But the cup, in order to make a sound, also needs an external condition.
Entonces significa como eso, significa palo representa como la condición externos.
The stick represents like external conditions.
Taza, condición internos.
And the cup is the internal conditions.
Y ese dos ambos hacer la problema o cosas buenas.
It's when both meet that there is either a problem or there is something good.
Y entonces, por ejemplo, los 5 venenos es como causa de problema fundamental como si fuera un taza,
For
¿no?
example, the 5 poisons are what are the principal internal factors that are creating these issues.
O sea, alguien insulta o alguna palabra fea para aprender para ti, ese sonido sale, porque tu taza tiene sonido.
So if somebody yells at you or like says negative words towards you, the only thing that makes a sound is if you actually have those internal poisons.
Entonces, nosotros no evitamos el 5 veneno. Ese sonido nunca va a poder parar la sonido
If
externo.
we don't get rid of these internal poisons in our own mind, we will never get rid of the problem.
Integrating consciousness is a channel devised to explore a plethora of modalities accessible in supporting the collective in the exploration and expansion of self, and ultimately integrating what we've learned. The planet is shifting its vibration. Old paradigms and concepts are being challenged. Science is shifting, supporting, and merging the teachings of ancient spiritual beliefs. The masses are feeling the shift, ultimately and collectively expanding consciousness. We are in an incredibly exciting time, yet many of us lack communities, guides, leaders, and teachers to turn to for support because we don't know how to find them. My name is Lelanea Fulton, and I'm a spiritual transcendental mindset coach and unity consciousness mentor. My intention is to create a space that supports individuals seeking personal growth by providing a wealth of knowledge, tools, strategies, insights, practitioners, and language. This will be achieved through the diverse guests I invite to this podcast. So your free and easy support of subscribing, rating, and reviewing this podcast is paramount, as is how such information can move through the platform algorithms. So if you are with us via Spotify, then you can support us by following, hitting the notification bell, and rating us with a 5-star review. If you're with us via YouTube, then you can support us by going to the channel, subscribing, and going to your favorite episodes and leaving a thumbs up, as well as a comment on how this episode has supported you in your growth. Also, every month we will offer free and easy ways that you can acquire free coaching sessions and more with your favorite practitioner. I would also like to invite you to please share any episode that moves you. You never know when a small act of kindness can support a huge energetic shift in a person's life. We are all here to support one another through acts of kindness, and to pass along information is a tremendous act of service. So thank you, and may you recognize the powerful creator you are.
Hello, beautiful beings. Every episode that I do feels like a very powerful and informative episode where I am sitting down with really beautiful minds, beautiful integrous beings who are guided by a desire to be of service to others. This particular episode I'm very excited about, as I am sitting down with Drupon Lama Dorje and his director of retreat, Caroline Putnam, who is also the director of his foundation and his translator. The Lama, who is a traditional Buddhist monk, started training in the lineage of Drikung Kagyu since the age of 5, has spent many years in South America. And so he speaks Spanish and some English. Today's episode will be in Spanish with an English translator. This episode is chock full of amazing information. Mindfulness practices, meditation, to the 5 poisons of the human experience that as we take time to work through and resolve, can allow us to move to a more enlightened place of being. We also navigate topics such as the war within and how it transcends into the world, and how individually we can play a major role in the cleaning up energetically and emotionally of the planet, and how each one of us plays a pivotal role in supporting the conscious evolution of the planet. In the second part of the series, the Lama takes us through the journey of his retreat in Costa Rica and the future plans that he has for this retreat. Also shares with us ways that we can participate in group meditations with the Lama and guided mantras, as well as some journeys that he guides, taking them to different parts of India. One in particular that I'm hoping to get to participate in this year. So without further ado, please welcome Drupon Lama Dorje and Caroline Putnam. So Drupon Lama Dorje and Caroline, it is such a pleasure to have you. I'm so grateful and excited. And, clearly you're in Costa Rica right now. So thank you for participating and being a part of this conversation.
Absolutely. Muchas gracias. Thank you for receiving us today.
I know at the age of 24, you entered a 4-year solo retreat in the mountains of India, where he trained deeply in the Fivefold path of Mahamudra and the 6 yogas of Naropa. And I was wondering if you could elaborate and articulate a little more of what that means and what that is.
Ok, maravilloso. Y primero estoy muy muy feliz y gracias, Linda.
First of all, it's just such an honor, and I'm so happy to be here. Thank you so much, Lelanea.
Entonces yo, claro, soy budismo tibetano, nacido en los Himalayas.
So I come from like a Tibetan Buddhist background, and I was born in the Himalayas.
Y yo desde 5 años ya en la monasterio aprendiendo internamente filosofía budista
And
tibetano.
since I was 5 years old, I was in the monastery and have been learning Tibetan Buddhism for that entire time.
Y después cuando tengo 24 años, tuve un retiro solitario, es un retiro muy tradicional, como de manera.
So when I was 24 years old, I went into a solitary retreat in the mountains of India. And traditionally, it's a 3-year, 3-month, and 3-day retreat that we do. But in this case, my teacher shared with me that it's not important to be hurried and just get to the finish line. It's really important for the wisdom to sink in. So I ended up doing a 4-year solitary retreat.
Entonces, eso retiro me ha cambiado realmente profundamente parte de mi vida. Yo nunca he encontrado algo sin ser encontrados.
And it was really something that deeply impacted my life. And I feel like something that I had never found in life before, I found there.
Entonces, sin ser eso, ¿no? Entonces, quinto por Mahamudra es como la 5, ¿no? Y quintos. Entonces, primero llama la bodhicitta, internamente bodhicitta.
So the Fivefold Mahamudra is like a 5-step pathway, and that first kind of major step is called bodhicitta.
Y después llama como yitam se llama.
And the second part is called yitam, or deity yoga.
Y después se llama la guru yoga.
The third one's called guru yoga.
Después llama Mahamudra.
And the fourth is called Mahamudra.
Después llama dedication.
And then the fifth is called dedication.
Entonces, yo breve, ¿cómo se llama? Application, yo con la tiempo, ¿no?
I can explain to you shortly what that means.
Entonces, bodhicitta significa mente altruista.
Bodhicitta means the altruistic or virtuous mind.
Un basado mente amor incondicional, compassion.
It's a mind that's based in unconditional love and compassion.
Realmente quiere beneficiar todos los seres, no solo yo mismo.
And
¿no?
that I really want to benefit others, not just myself.
Entonces, es mente pura. Y comenzar, ¿no? Cualquier práctica, no es intención pura tener comenzar,
And
¿no?
so any type of practice we do, it's so important to have that as the basis of our intention.
Cuando tú tienes esa mente como la altruista,
And when you have this altruistic mind,
tú conectas tu segundo nivel, ¿no?
then you connect with the second level.
Llama Yitam,
Which is-
conciencia supremo.
You connect with the Yidam or the deity, which means the supreme
Con
consciousness.
conciencia noble.
It means the noble
Este
consciousness.
significa tú naturaliza innato bondad de todos.
It means the innate goodness of all things.
Más allá de forma,
It's
¿cierto?
beyond
Todos
form.
nosotros tenemos independiente de la forma o creencias.
We all actually have this beyond form and beyond belief
Ese
systems.
permite conectar en la bodhicitta, ¿no?
This allows us to really connect with
Ese
bodhicitta.
nos llama como deity, ¿cómo llama? Divino internos, ¿no?
So this is called the deity or our divine, our inner divinity.
Entonces eso practica tu cuerpo, palabra, mente, transforma completamente seres divinos,
So
seres
then
iluminados.
the practice is that every action of your body, speech, and mind should be an enlightened action or compassionate action.
Tú como la transforma todo lo ordinario como yo, ego, aflicciones, apegos. Cualquiera tú como la tomando té, comiendo, dormir, cualquiera como cultivar la visión pura.
So what this practice does is that you transform every action, every ordinary action, even drinking tea or eating, all of those should be transformed into an action of bodhicitta where you're benefiting others
Y con visión pura.
and cultivating pure vision.
Ya, es llama Yidam. Después se viene, llama Guru Yoga.
Then the third one's called Guru Yoga.
Ya, Guru significa sánscrito palabra.
Guru is a Sanskrit word.
Traducción normalmente llamamos Tibetan lamas o teacher.
And
profesor.
like a different way of saying that in Tibetan is lama, or some people could say your teacher, your master.
Pero ahí tiene muy profundos.
But it's a very deep, a deep thing.
Gu significa oscuro.
Gu means the darkness.
Ru significa como luminosidad.
And Ru
Como
means
luz.
like luminosity or light.
Entonces, ¿quién tiene potencial de como la transformar la oscuridad? Es llama guru. o
So a
lamas.
guru is the person that has the capacity to transform darkness into the light of wisdom.
Ya. Entonces, ese, claro, normalmente está conectado a nuestra naturaleza mente pura.
So this is actually connected with our own pure nature of mind.
Y externamente nosotros tenemos gurús como las convencionales,
And
¿no?
of course, we also have an external teacher, or like a
Profesores.
conventional teacher that helps us.
Y ese principalmente cultiva, llama una confianza, devoción.
So the principal method here is to cultivate trust and
Confianza.
devotion.
Profundo, eso, ¿no? Eso es su práctica principal, ¿no?
That's the principal practice.
Después viene ya Mahamudra.
And then there's Mahamudra.
Maha significa grande.
Maha means great,
Mudra es como sello.
and mudra means seal.
Como si fuera todo lo incluye dentro de sellos. Como uno, como rey, como dentro de uno sello, ¿no?
It's-
Que incluye, que no puede volver.
It's like everything in the universe is included in this seal. It's like a king that puts that like wax seal on a paper. Everything is included, and you can't return after that. It is the final mark.
Entonces, todo lo como incluye dentro de la interdependencia y ¿cómo se llama? Y sabiduría. ¿no?
So what it's saying is that everything in the universe operates under a law of interdependence. And so it's interdependence and wisdom
¿No? Y compasión,
and
¿verdad?
compassion.
Entonces, eso práctica de como normal, no dualidad,
So this is a practice of non-duality.
¿no? No depende de la forma, ¿cierto?
Doesn't depend on the form.
Todos somos iguales, ¿no?
We are all equal.
Ese mirando visión más allá de forma.
So
física.
this looks far beyond form.
Porque acá, por ejemplo, lama tibetano, otra persona, como no sé, otra religión, diferente,
Right
¿cierto?
now we
Igual,
kind of
¿no?
all look different. I look
Creencia.
Tibetan, or you can tell I'm Buddhist, and somebody else, it's a different religion or different culture, and we think
Pero-
we're different.
Nosotros, esencia no puede separar.
But you cannot
¿no?
separate our
Como-
essence.
Es un espacio.
It's like space.
Ese vio uno solo, ¿no?
And so it's just one view.
Entonces, una meditación de la no dualidad se
And
llama,
so
¿no?
this is called the meditation of non-duality.
Ya, después de quinto ese se llama dedication.
And the fifth step is called dedication.
Tú hiciste ese trabajo 4 etapas,
So
¿no?
when you do these other 4 steps,
Todo eso beneficio para otros seres, ¿no? Como
all of
dedicar,
it's to benefit
dedicar.
other beings, so dedicate it to them.
Porque seguir nosotros a veces cualquiera hacemos, yo quiero liberar solo, yo quiero alcanzar felicidad, pero solo apegas yo, ¿no? Ese dedication permite para desapegar de yo, ¿no?
Most of our actions are all centered around ourself, what benefits myself or my life. And so in this case, we're practicing dedication because we want to benefit all beings. We want all of them to benefit from this practice.
¿Entiendes? Eso se llama más resumido como quíntuple
So this
Mahamudra.
is kind of a summary of what Fivefold Mahamudra is about.
Después se va a 6 yoga Naropa.
And
Después, ¿no?
naturally, the next step moves into the 6 yogas of Naropa.
Pero dentro mucho detalle da Lama hablando poco muy como su resumen.
I'm giving you more of a summary right now because there's many steps in all of those steps. These are the main categories, but in general, it goes from the Fivefold Mahamudra into the 6 yogas of Naropa.
¿No? Y después 6 yoga Naropa tiene 6 yogas, ¿no?
So there's 6 yogas.
Principal. Entonces, yoga, como no pensamos solo como los ejercicios externos.
So yoga in this case doesn't mean like physical yogic actions, like or exercise.
Yoga es una palabra muy profundo en el budismo tibetano,
In Tibetan Buddhism, the word yoga is very deep and profound.
¿no? Como la unión primero.
It means the
unión.
union.
Y yoga también tama da naljor, da realización como supremo, ¿no?
It also means like supreme realization.
¿No? Entonces ahí tiene 6, primero llama, la tumu se llama,
So the first one of the 6 is called tumo.
¿no? Se llama fuego interno,
It's your inner fire.
que trabaja tu chakra ombligos.
It works at your navel chakra.
Principalmente trabaja la aflicción apegos.
And it works to transform the affliction of attachment.
Apego transforma como amo incondicional.
We transform attachment into unconditional love.
Porque mucha gente confunde amor y apego, ¿cierto?
Many people get
Migla.
very confused between love and attachment.
Pero tú ver solo sin pensar muy parecido, ¿no?
If you don't think about it too much, they look very similar.
Profundamente miramos y es totalmente contradicción entre
If
las
you
dos.
actually look very deeply, they are contradiction.
Ok. Entonces llama tumo fuego interior, ¿no?
And so tumo is like the inner fire.
Eso yo no puedo usar ninguna ropa internamente. En la Himalaya tiene muchos nieves, ¿no?
And so
Interna la fuego.
the practice is the monks are without clothes, and they just have a very small light shawl, and it's in the snow. And then they have to work with heating up their body in inner fire.
Y ni dormir como la normal.
And you're not allowed to lay down. You have to sit straight. You can't sleep at night. You have to sit straight.
Alguna tiene uno casca con
You
instrucciones,
kind of have these
¿no?
little meditation
Y
boxes.
día noches, ¿no? Y pues durmiendo como con la conscientemente, ¿no?
And so you have to sleep consciously.
Ya, y eso. Después de viene chakra corazón.
Then you come into the heart chakra.
Eso trabaja, llama segundo yoga.
And
Clara
this
luz
is
se
the
llama.
second yoga, and it's called clear light.
Ese tú principalmente transforma la confusión como ignorancia en la claridad.
So we transform confusion into clarity.
Y ese meditation para ti como profundo dormido momento.
And so this is a practice where you're required to go into a very deep
Muy
sleep.
dormido profundo, donde no hay soñando, pero dormido.
You're very deep
Como
asleep,
blackout,
but not
¿no?
dreaming. It's like when you kind of black out.
Ahí tiene tiene una sabiduría de no dualidad.
And
¿no?
there's a wisdom of non-duality.
Pero nosotros no percibimos.
But we don't perceive it
Pero
normally.
cuando interna,
But when
cuando
you
interna,
train,
puede eso mucho, ¿no?
you can train to recognize that.
Entonces, la idea es que tú, cualquier momento tú puedes utilizar en la meditación.
The idea is that no matter
Durmiendo,
like any type
comiendo.
of action you do, whether you're drinking or sleeping or eating, all of it becomes a meditation.
Ya. Después, el tercer yoga es como chakra, ¿no?
The third
Chakra,
is the
¿no?
throat chakra.
Eso trabaja, la llama yoga del ilusorio.
And this is with the illusory yoga.
Y llama yoga de la dream, como
And
llama sueño.
we work with dream yoga.
Cuando tú sueñas,
When you actually dream,
y como reconoce,
you recognize you're dreaming.
y no importa soñando pesadilla buena, tú das cuenta de ese sueño.
And
¿no?
it doesn't matter if you have a good dream or a bad dream, you know you're dreaming.
Ese ayuda para evitar los miedos, desapego,
And it helps to get rid of fear and attachment.
detachment. Ok. Y eso, entonces, eso yoga, ¿cierto? Eso yoga de sueño. Ok. Después se haga corona chakra.
Then you come into the crown chakra.
Haga como la rabia, rabia.
Here you're working
Rabia.
to transform anger.
haga como la envidia y ego.
And here you're transforming ego and envy.
자, 그러네 도 yogas.
So there's two yogas there.
이 llama transferencia conciencia se llama.
One is called the transference of consciousness.
Uno llama yoga de la parto.
And one is called the yoga of bardo, or the intermediate state.
¿No? Como eso, ¿no? Como entonces, eso de meditation, como abriendo ese chakra, ¿no? Conectar a la conciencia.
And so this meditation opens up this chakra.
Como salir nuestra conciencia.
So that you have control to eject your consciousness.
No. Entonces, eso más o menos 6 yoga Naropa muy resumido.
So those are the summarized version of the 6 yogas in Naropa.
Y ahí está mucho profundo con las lamas. Un día ustedes van a saber eso. Un día, como quien quiere saber más profundidad, y ahí Lama está enseñando.
He said, if you ever want to know even more deeply about those, then I teach those practices.
So I get really excited when I hear about unity consciousness, and I love that much of what he just elaborated on is regarding non-duality, because unity consciousness is a big part of my coaching and what I feel called to really explore and talk about. Last year and a couple years prior, I had an experience of unity consciousness or non-duality where time literally stopped and everything in my environment was moving very slowly. And I was hearing messages of everyone that was around me was me, just having different experiences. And what at one time was intellectual became a physical experience of seeing not just brothers and sisters, but they are me. They are a mere version of me, and they're having a different experience, which is allowing me to have a different experience if I'm able to alter my perspective. And through recognizing that everyone around me was me, I then began to recognize and know that I was a fragment of source, which ultimately made me source and made me God. And it was probably one of the most incredible experiences that I've ever had. And they tend to happen in the most unusual of circumstances. And so I feel like this is a conversation to be had more of, and that non-duality is a concept that needs far more explanation and exploration. So I'm wondering if he would like to unpack a bit more in the concept of non-duality.
Maravilloso, maravilloso. Eso mismo, tú tuviste experiencia o mismo, más o menos, conectado con eso.
He said, yeah, the experience that you had sounds like it's very connected with this.
Yeah, ese absolutamente nosotros meta ese llegar a la conciencia universal.
He said that's actually the goal, is to connect with the universal consciousness.
¿Cómo será? Porque en la mar es un solo mar, pero tiene muchos nombres, ¿cierto?
Like there's, you could like look at the ocean, for example. It's really one interconnected ocean, but we separate them and call them different oceans.
No, como hay cosas, ¿no? Entonces, fondo es uno solo conectado.
But it's all one basis that's connected.
Entonces, no dualidad significa, por ejemplo, puede hablar fundamental nivel, segundo nivel, ¿no? La fundamental nivel es como no dualidad, background, ¿no?
So,
el segundo nivel tiene dualidad, ¿no?
So we could say that you could kind of look at this at two levels. At the background level is non-duality, and then on the second level there's duality.
Entonces nosotros como relacionamos tibetano se llama realidad última realidad convencional se llama.
And what we call that in the Tibetan Buddhism is we call it the ultimate reality and then the conventional reality.
Entonces ese dos inseparables.
And they're actually inseparable.
Porque desde como si fuera uno, desde la cielo aparece, ¿qué va a aparecer? Como nubes. Desde nubes sale la lluvia, ¿cierto? Un solo proceso.
So from the sky appears the clouds, and from the clouds comes the rain, but it's all one process.
Bueno, lo mismo nosotros, ¿no?
It's the same with us.
Toda esa conciencia universal puede llamar, o tibetano llama Dharmakaya, ¿no?
So you could say that, this universal consciousness, or what we call in Tibetan Buddhism, the Dharmakaya.
Entonces, un espacio infinito.
It's an infinite space.
De más allá de forma, palabra,
it's beyond form and it's beyond words.
Entonces, eso cada uno no se puede sentir eso.
And each of us can experience that.
Y cuando conectamos eso,
and when we connect to that,
nosotros puede sentir unión como familia.
then we can all feel union as a family.
¿Por qué ahora sentimos tanto dualismos?
Why is it that we feel so much duality now?
Problemas como yo.
Because we have this problem with I.
Yo hice como si fuera una muralla.
I
¿no?
creates a boundary.
Por ejemplo, ahora Lama acá tengo una casa chiquitita.
So Lama's here in a small house.
Ese espacio de esa casa, espacio de fuera, uno solo, no hay dos.
The space outside the house and the space inside the house is not two, it's one space.
Pero yo le puse como llama, una muralla en la casa.
But I put some walls here and I called it a house.
Y es mi casa.
And then I called it my house.
Muy como, ¿no? Mi espacio, ¿no?
My space.
Y yo como mucho apego con eso.
And then there's so much attachment
Y
to
mucha
it.
aversión.
And a lot of aversion.
Entonces, en realidad, no es tuya, ¿no?
But really it's not mine.
No puedes separar.
You can't actually separate it.
Y eso no piensa gente, ¿no? Eso, ¿no?
And people don't think about that.
Entonces, eso yo creo que es súper importante. Y no dualidad significa no necesitas destruir toda la dualidad.
The non-duality doesn't mean we need to go destroying all of the duality.
¿No? Dentro de no dualidad puede mantener la dualidad.
Within non-duality, you can still maintain duality.
Solo miramos arcoíris, Lama digo,
Just
arcoíris.
look at a rainbow, for example.
Diferentes colores.
There's many different colors.
Dualismo, eso es dualidad, ¿no?
This is called duality.
Pero uno solo, no puede separar. ¿Cómo separar?
But it's just one rainbow. You can't actually separate all of it.
Ese uno buena ejemplo, ¿no?
And so this is a
Buen
very,
ejemplo,
very
¿no?
good example.
Somos unos, uno ese somos.
Like we are one,
One
and one is we.
all. Ya, eso estoy pensando.
Mm-hmm.
What I want to reflect back is the understanding that the walls of the house that create the illusion of division is an illusion in itself. But through having contrast or duality allows us a greater understanding if we remain from a child's mind or remain the student. To recognize contrast helps us recognize the oneness or the unity consciousness or the non-duality. So by experiencing duality, we can transcend in recognizing that non-duality, recognizing non-duality and that duality is actually an illusion.
Absolutely, uno pega atención, ¿no? Y es importante entender la interdependencia,
And
fundamental,
he
¿no?
said exactly like that. And one thing I want to add is it's very important to recognize interdependence.
Todos solo interdependencia, somos uno, como es, ¿verdad?
Like
¿Cómo
you
no?
can, we're all one, and because of this interdependence.
Yo le digo siempre, ¿cómo es uno tu cuerpo? Porque tiene varios, ¿cómo se llama? La dedos.
Like even for example, your body and your hand, your hand has all these parts. It has fingers.
Si uno te la daña chiquitito,
And if there's pain in one finger,
y tú duele, ¿no?
you actually feel it in your body
Porque esa parte de tu cuerpo, ¿no?
because it's part of your body.
Y cualquier nosotros como hacemos, como la llaman, en la daño para otros seres,
And any type of pain or harm that we do to other beings,
alguna manera regresa a ti,
it's going to return back to pain for us
porque somos unos,
because we're one.
porque está dañando parte de su cuerpo,
Because
supongo, ¿no?
you're actually hurting your own body.
Por eso dice una cosa, budismo dice, todo no puede tener la soledad, no puede vivir ningún fenómeno, no existe sólido.
So in Buddhism, we talk about that there's no phenomenon or no being can live solid and on its own
Permanente algo, ¿no?
permanently.
Todo está conectado. con
Everything
eso.
is connected.
Y esa manera podemos hacerlo, somos uno, ¿cierto?
And so through this, we can actually see that we're all one.
Y también posibilidad de ser feliz, ¿no?
Through the same way, you can actually become happy.
Porque todo está interdependencia, causa y efectos,
Because it's
condiciones.
all interdependent through causes and conditions.
Si algo fenómeno permanente, por ejemplo,
If there was a phenomenon that was permanent
Como-
and it never could change,
como Lama Dorje, yo soy yo,
like
¿no?
if
Muy
Lama
permanente,
was a Lama and he could never change,
yo no puedo hacer parte de ustedes.
I wouldn't be part of you.
No puede unir porque
We-
yo estoy sólido.
We can't unite because I'm solid and by
¿no?
myself.
Por eso razón ese todo interdependencia.
And
¿no?
this is kind of the logic behind interdependence.
Y entonces fundamento nuestro propio yo se adquiriendo, ego.
So
yo,
really,
yo.
it's this I that's this ego that's creating this I.
Siento algo permanente,
Like
¿no?
we think that we're permanent.
Y cuando está yo se ha pegado con la yo mismo,
And when
apegamos en la yo,
And when we get attached to this I,
tú se viene
then
naturalmente.
you come.
Apego,
I'm
rechazo.
attached to me and I'm averse to you.
Ahí viene dualidades,
And
¿no?
then duality occurs.
Eso más.
That's beautiful. I've heard some of your conversations before, the conversation on the 5 poisons and the talk on attachment and practicing Lojong. And, you know, some of the questions that came up for me when privy to that conversation was the war within and how it transcends into the world. And in my coaching practice, that's a lot of work that we do with individuals in terms of understanding patterns and shadows and being able to be more receptive to what is happening internally. Because as we change internally, we start to change our personal reality, which then changes our external reality. And I was wondering if he would like to elaborate on the war within and how it transcends into the world.
Just a gentle reminder that if you're doing the inner work or feeling called for deeper self-exploration and transformation, that my practice is here to support you. My role as a transcendental mindset coach is to serve as a compassionate guide and mirror, reflecting your inner brilliance and potential because you came to this life with everything it is that you need to align with your path and purpose. In doing this, I offer a range of services tailored to meet the unique needs of each client, incorporating the support of evidence-based coaching techniques, meditation, mindfulness practices, gene keys shadow work, pattern recognition, somatic work, inner parts work, kinetic, and breath work to facilitate inner balance and alignment alongside being trauma-informed. We will work in tandem as I support you in integrating or embodying your newfound awareness and heightened openness to a higher form of consciousness. It is my intention to support you as you architecturally design the reality you want to participate in and the life that you want to live. My practice supports you in being a masterful creator of intentions. You can contact me via my website. The link is in the show notes. So thank you, and please enjoy the remainder of the episode.
Maravilloso. Ya, eso uno mi principal trabajo de Lama hizo durante los 13 años.
He said this was like the principal work I was doing in the 3 años en el retiro, the 4 years.
13 años en Latin America.
In the 13 years that I was in Chile, in Latin America, this is primarily what I've been working on and sharing.
¿No? Entonces, por supuesto, nosotros siempre hablamos, ya, todo el mundo estamos, nosotros ponemos unos dedos fuera, ¿cierto?
So
¿no?
it's very common. It really, all of us like to point our finger outward towards the problems.
Oh, ya, todo ese problema externo y cosas, ¿no? Como etcétera, ¿no? Por la clima o cambiando clima, global calentamiento, etcétera, etcétera, ¿no?
Mm-hmm. We always like to point the finger outwards about like maybe different politicians or the climate or different, like the global warming, all of these things. We think the problem's out there.
Entonces yo les siempre digo como si fuera más profundo, miramos raíz de los problemas dentro de nosotros.
And if we look a lot deeper, we can actually see that the root of the problem is on the inside.
El budismo dice como si fuera yo siempre uno digo mi cosa, uno taza, como que suena, ¿cierto? Uno toca, mano, unos palitos. Por ejemplo.
Okay, so he's saying that, for example, if I have a cup here, and then when something hits the cup, it makes a sound.
Sonido, ¿no? Entonces, dice viene dos condiciones.
And there's 2 conditions that happen in order for the cup to make a sound.
Y taza es de dentro nosotros, ¿ya?
So the cup is on the inside of
Unos
us.
palos que a nosotros eso, ¿ya?
And maybe a stick is coming from the outside.
¿El sonido de dónde salió?
And where does the sound come from?
Puede ser taza o puede ser palo.
Does it come from the cup or does it come from the stick?
No puede ser ninguno, ¿no?
It doesn't come from either.
Pero taza tiene potencial para hacer el sonido.
It is the cup that has the potential to make the sound.
Y palo no puede hacer sonido solo, ¿no?
And the stick cannot make a sound by itself.
Pero taza necesita un sonido, ¿cierto?
But the cup, in order to make a sound, also needs an external condition.
Entonces significa, como eso significa, palo representa como la condición externos.
The stick represents like external conditions.
Taza condiciones internas.
And the cup is the internal conditions.
Y ese dos ambos ahí hacen la problema o cosas buenas.
It's when both meet that there is either a problem or there's something good.
Entonces, por ejemplo, los 5 venenos es como causa de problema fundamental como si fuera un taza.
For example, the 5 poisons are what are the principal internal factors that are creating these issues.
Si alguien insulta o alguna palabra fea para hablar para ti, ese sonido sale, porque tu taza tiene sonidos.
So if somebody yells at you or like says negative words towards you, the only thing that makes a sound is if you actually have those internal poisons.
Entonces, nosotros no evitamos es la 5 veneno. Ese sonido nunca va a poder parar la sonido externo.
If we don't get rid of these internal poisons in our own mind, we will never get rid of the problems.
Entonces, 5 venenos son más breves. Primero llama confusión.
The 5 poisons are, one is called confusion.
O, Tibetan marikwa se llama.
And it's called marikpa.
Significa no ver claramente.
It means to not see clearly.
Pero eso no está refiriendo tú nunca estudiado, no quiere decir, nada intelectuales.
This word has nothing to do with intellect and like whether you studied or not. This is like a state of confusion or doubt.
En hablamos no permite verla somos unos, ¿no?
It doesn't allow us to see that we're all one.
No ver, es no ver la dualidad.
We're not seeing,
no dualidad.
We cannot see the non-duality.
Se siente como todos separados.
We feel like it's all separate.
Es llama confusión.
And it's confusion.
Después nace apegos.
And so then there is attachment.
Apego, yo, ¿no?
So
como
there's
mi familia, yo solo importante.
This
¿no?
attachment to me and to my family or my
apego,
life.
¿no? Después se viene rechazo. Mientras más apego, rechazo.
The more attachment we have, the more aversion we have.
Después llama ego.
And then we have ego.
Ego ese como puede tener mucho nivel de egos, como arrogancia o ego bajos, ¿no?
You can have many different levels of ego. You can have a lot of arrogance and pride, or you can have a low self-esteem. It's still very focused on me.
Y luego puede tener como envidia, celo.
And the 5th one is envy and jealousy.
Entonces, eso de como rey de la problema.
So these are the roots of all the
Como
problems.
realmente transformamos eso dentro de nosotros,
And if we transform those on the inside,
eso puede impactar nuestro mundo, nuestra comunidad, nuestra familia.
we can impact the world and our communities and our families.
Primero propio cuerpos, físicamente, ¿no?
But it starts with our own body.
Tu sangre mueve.
It actually makes changes in your own body. It makes your blood move more easily.
Porque un ejemplo, cuando nosotros tenemos mucho rabia, por ejemplo, ¿no?
Because, for example, when you're very angry,
Porque nuestro cuerpo pone muy rígido.
and the body gets so rigid when you're
Entonces
angry,
está bloqueando todos canales.
and you block all your channels,
Y no permite mover la sangre
and it doesn't allow the blood to move.
y mucho va a enfermar.
And then
¿no?
sickness starts to set into the body.
Entonces, por eso todo está nosotros cambia está de dentro hacia afuera.
And so really the changes are coming from the inside out.
Y eso yo pensando eso, ¿no?
And this is what I'm thinking.
Y yo siempre compartiendo todos mis hermanos y hermanas de Latinoamérica.
And I always share these teachings with my brothers and sisters, particularly in Latin America.
Porque es 5 conectados, los 5 elementos, normalmente más detallados,
These
¿no?
5 are actually connected to the 5 elements.
¿No? Confusión, espacio.
Confusion is space.
Y apego, fuego.
Attachment is fire.
Rabia es agua.
Anger is water.
¿Cuál es otro? Y la tierra, ese ego.
Earth is ego.
Y la vento es envidia, celo.
And wind is jealousy and envy.
Ahí tiene aspecto negativo, aspecto positivo.
So they have these elements have their pure version and their like impure version.
Porque uno de agua, porque demasiado agua, por ejemplo.
For example, if there's so much water, too much water.
Externamente, por ejemplo, ¿qué hace?
Externally.
Destruye todo.
If there's too much water externally, it actually destroys everything.
Ese aspecto negativo,
That's
¿no?
the negative aspect of water.
Y como ya ahí tiene mucho polvo, no hay agua, necesita poquito de agua, ¿no?
But imagine there's just like some dust on the ground and then some water gets sprinkled there.
Y hace unión,
Then the water drops unite together.
todo une. Ese es como su positivo aspecto,
So
¿no?
the positive aspect of water or the positive aspect of anger, its opposite is actually union.
¿Entendió? Y entonces ahí todo, ¿no? Nada se da hablar porque es una tiempo.
So I don't need to speak about all of them, but each one of those elements have an impure version and a pure
Y
version.
entonces eso yo conecto cinco elementos externos, cinco elementos internos, cinco elementos secretos.
And so the way I teach this is there are 5 elements externally, meaning in the world, like physically. There are the 5 elements internally, meaning the body. And there are 5 elements at the secret level, which is the level of the mind.
Beautiful. So how can the everyday person become privy to the 5 poisons, and which 5 poisons, if not all of them, that they're experiencing? And how can they be mindful and take accountability and start cleaning those up? Are there practices that they can participate in on a daily level?
Maravilloso. Y todos nosotros tenemos, mientras estamos no iluminados, digamos, todos tenemos, pero cada persona tiene, ¿cómo se llama? Una emoción siempre dirige.
While we are all in an unenlightened state, we have all of the 5 poisons, but typically one of those poisons is taking leadership over the other
¿Cierto?
ones.
Entonces, por eso es importante mi recomendación. Primero paso es como mindfulness de la calma.
The first step is mindfulness and calmness.
Como yo le digo, como neutro,
You have to put your car back in neutral.
Neutro, ¿no? Y entonces ahí tú puedes manejar.
And then you can drive.
Y entonces neutro significa tu conciencia traerla en centro.
So it means bring your consciousness to its center.
Con la respiración.
With your breath.
Calma.
Bring it to calmness.
Mirarlos.
And look at it.
¿Cuál ¿cómo se llama? En la veneno más fuerte, mi vida siempre manejando.
And look, in our life, which one of these poisons is driving our life more?
Siempre dominando mi vida,
There's one
haciendo problemas.
dominating my life a little bit more, and it's creating a lot of problems in my life.
Alguna tiene rabia, más rabia.
Sometimes
siempre.
anger is so present.
Alguna apego.
Sometimes attachment or desire.
Oh, tú digo, yo tengo mucho apego. Ya,
You can say,
apego.
okay, I have attachment.
Cuando tú identificas eso,
When you first know it,
tiene medicina.
then there's medicine.
Muy simple.
It's very simple.
Si tú no identificas,
If you don't know it,
es muy difícil encontrar medicina.
then it's very hard to find the medicine.
Igual de doctor.
Just like at the doctor.
Entonces, cuando tienes apego, por ejemplo,
So when you have attachment,
y tú practicas amor incondicional.
so the opposite of attachment is unconditional love. So that's your practice.
Porque apego es yo quiero feliz, deseo beneficio a mí mismo, ¿no?
So
Eso,
this
¿no?
attachment is I would like to be happy. I would like this for me.
Entonces, amor incondicional es como la desapego,
And
¿no?
unconditional love is detachment.
Dejar libre.
Allow things to be as they are.
Deseo felicidad para otros
And
seres, no solo yo.
wish happiness for other beings, not just
Como
for yourself.
solo puedes practicar no solo de familia, pareja, casado, ¿no?
We can start practicing in our own families, with our partners, with our children and our family.
Puede amar, ¿no? Incondicionalmente, ¿no?
Unconditionally love them
Sin cambio nada,
without asking them to change,
sin expectativa.
without expectations.
Ese uno practica uno mind training, ¿no?
This is
Internamente
a
mind, ¿no?
practice of mind training.
Y poco a poco disminuye el apego,
And so little by little, you decrease the attachment
disminuye los miedos.
and you also decrease your own fear,
Muy feliz.
and you're very happy.
Una verdadera libertad.
It's true freedom.
Entonces, cada veneno puede trabajar de esa
Puedes
manera, ¿no?
decirlos que es otros. So that was the element of
Apego.
attachment, which was fire.
Y rabia es como la paciencia.
So anger, which was water, is
Aceptación.
the opposite of it is patience and acceptance
Y compasión fundamental.
and compassion.
Porque cuando nosotros reaccionamos, ¿cierto?
It's
Reaccionamos.
when we react with agitation or
Por
anger.
ejemplo, alguien me poquito molesta, inmediatamente reaccionamos con la rabia, ¿no?
Someone bothers me or doesn't do what I want them to, then I get frustrated right away
Porque no tiene conciencia.
because I'm unaware.
No comprendemos situación de esa persona,
Then
¿no?
I'm not
Claro, ¿no?
recognizing the situation of the other person.
Y esa persona también sufriendo.
This person's also suffering.
Y nosotros reaccionamos, agregamos más sufrimiento a esa persona.
So we react and then we create more suffering for that person's life.
Eso no es compasión, ¿no?
And it's not compassionate.
Compasión, y él está sufriendo, ¿no?
Compassion is recognizing this person's suffering.
Su mal día,
They're having a bad day.
mal situación.
They have a bad
Por eso le
situation.
palabra fea.
Their words came out very ugly towards me.
Yo no voy a agregar para
I'm not
él.
going to add anything to
Voy a
their life.
ayudar.
I'm going to help them.
Por lo menos no voy a agregar,
At the
¿no?
very least, I'm not going to harm them and
Y
add
con la
anything.
paciencia.
So I cultivate patience.
Y tú conserva su energía,
And so
¿no?
you end up conserving your own energy
Y otro también, ¿no?
and helping the other.
Ese de rabia.
So that was fire and water so far.
Ya. Después se viene la ego.
So then there's ego.
Ego normalmente tres tipos de ego, ¿no?
So there's kind of 3 types of ego
Uno
usually.
ego como arrogancia,
One-
yo soy supremo, mejor.
One is like a supreme ego, like I'm better than others.
Dice falta respeto a otros seres.
And it
¿no?
lacks respect for others.
Otro, yo soy muy bajo.
The other one is
Ya.
very kind of low and
Yo
depressed.
no tengo potencial.
I don't have potential.
No puedo nada.
I
¿no?
can't do these things.
Eso como falta de autorrespeto.
And it's a lack of self-respect.
Entonces tiene unir dos,
So we unite them both.
como su sándwich, ¿no?
It's like a sandwich.
¿No? Y como la ego divino.
And it's called the divine ego.
Yo tengo potencial.
I have potential.
Otro también respeto.
Others also have potential, so I respect us both.
Como ecuanimidad,
In bringing in
igualdad.
equanimity.
Somos familia, todos tienen derecho a
We're
ser
family
feliz.
and we all have the right to be happy.
Ya, ese de como como llama, humildad, respeto,
So
su entidad.
this is so the antidote of ego is humility and respect,
Respeto a uno mismo o los demás.
respecting yourself and others, and so
Es su medicina, ¿no?
and that's the medicine.
Se llama tierra fértil.
So
tierra
that
fértil.
is the element of a fertile earth element.
¿Ok? Después, envidia.
And then envy.
Envidia, tú no sos veneno o otra persona feliz, yo quiero destruir, ¿no?
And so envy is like other people are happy and I wish they weren't happy. I don't like that.
Yo no tengo eso. Yo
I
no-
don't have what they
Yo
have.
quiero eso como subir, no
It's like
competencia.
I want
¿no?
to be in competition with them and be better than them.
Eso es muy cansativo, muy
It's
bien.
very
¿no?
tiring.
Entonces, miramos, todos seres tenemos ese derecho de ser felices.
So
¿no?
all beings have the right to be happy.
Todo el mundo trabaja duro y lograron, no robaron ninguna de mis cosas.
People worked very hard for what they're achieving, and it's not like they went and stole it from me.
No tiene razón de yo envidia para
There's
ello,
no
¿no?
reason really for me to be envious.
No puede obstaculizar
And I can't create an obstacle
y
for them.
puede transformarla como ricos secos.
So what we do is transform envy and jealousy into rejoice.
Alegría.
And alegría, joy.
Él disfruta su felicidad,
May they
¿no?
enjoy their happiness.
Yo también quiero como él un día,
I
¿no?
also would like to have that like them one day.
Eso es buena para un gran profesor, admiración, ¿no?
So we see them as like a teacher and respect them with great admiration.
Es no sufrimiento.
Then there's no suffering.
Y concentra en nuestra propia felicidad, ¿no?
And we can concentrate on our own happiness in this space.
Ese llama su antídoto se llama rikuseko, ¿ya?
Okay, so then the again the antidote of the wind element, which is rejoice.
Y espacio final.
So
Espacio.
the final element is space.
Espacio es como normalmente ilimitado, que
Space
nos hablamos.
typically is unlimited.
Amor ilimitado,
It's unlimited love,
sabiduría ilimitada.
unlimited wisdom.
¿Qué hace? Nosotros confusión,
Our
limitación.
confusion creates our own limitations.
¿Cómo no? Y entonces, ese como ¿cómo se llama? Su antídoto es sin limitación y claridad.
And so the antidote is to remove these limitations and to have clarity.
Y visión panorámica, visión de la cóndor.
It's like a panoramic view, like the condor,
Que puede percibir todo completamente, ¿no?
that allows us to see everything with
Todo direcciones.
completely, all directions.
Que comprende la ley del
That
interdependencia, ¿no?
understands the law of interdependence.
Y llama uno su antídoto.
So this is the antidote.
Entonces, eso hablamos resumido, es mucho más detallada.
And so this is I summarized this for you. There's a lot more details, but that was kind of the 5 elements in
Eso
summary.
yo quiero que ayuda mucho para las personas, ¿no?
And I think it's very helpful for all people.
Pero más, yo repito, más importante, mindfulness como atención plena, día a día, eso uno de las llaves.
And I would like to repeat that the most important thing every day is practicing mindfulness. You have to have mindfulness to see the poisons and to transform them.
Cada solo observa nuestra mente, cada
Observe
momento.
your mind. What are you doing every
¿no?
moment?
Momento, ¿no? Tarea con lo positivo.
Bring
Tarea lo positivo.
your consciousness and transform your mind into positive thoughts.
Ya. Ese es un fundamento, una protección para la mente.
This is actually a fundamental protection for the mind.
Thank you. You did such a wonderful job, delivering it in such a concise way. I know that it's very layered and complex, and there's a great deal to it. And so I want to reflect back that that I recognize that mindfulness and awareness, you said, is basically the introduction to the medicine. If you're not practicing mindfulness, which leads to awareness, then you can't even see the poison that you're suffering from. So then you can't resolve it or find the medication to it. So, as in my work, the major component is mindfulness and awareness and focusing on your language. What are the words that you're using? What are you saying to yourself? What's your internal dialogue? Because whatever that internal dialogue is, you're going to project that into the world. You're going to project it onto other people, and you're going to create a reality from this internal dialogue. So that leads me to another question that I have is, how we see our individual lack of compassion, because I know compassion and kindness are huge key components for you in your work and your teachings. So how is it that we see in everyday life our lack of compassion mirrored back to us in our environments?
Maravilloso, como yo pensé entero, ¿no? Y ya digo sobre de mindfulness y eso. Porque nuestro mundo hoy día un mundo muy como acelerado, un mundo, ¿cierto?
And so, I just want to reflect back to what you were just saying a moment ago, too, about mindfulness, because we're actually living in an accelerated world.
Muy como mucha turbulencia, mucho estresado, ¿no? Mucho compromiso, ¿no?
Lots of turbulence, ¿no? Lots of stress, lots of commitment. There's so much happening.
No tiene tiempo realmente sentir propia respiración.
We don't have time to feel our own breath.
No sentir tu presencia,
to
¿no?
feel your own presence.
Eso, millones de seres sienten eso, ¿no?
Millions of beings are feeling
Entonces,
this.
yo creo que es muy importante, por lo menos 5 minutos, imagina tomar respiración.
So I think starting with at least 5 minutes of breathing.
Que no buscamos y externo no va a encontrar en la vida. Que buscamos nosotros desde muchos años, nunca va a encontrar que queremos.
If we just keep looking for everything externally, we're still never going to find it. We've been looking for it for a long time and we haven't found it yet.
No va a encontrar. Y por eso te joya está dentro.
The jewel is on the inside,
corazón,
and it's there in our hearts.
Y fundamentalmente, yo creo que es importante, somos preciosos vidas humanos.
And I think it's so important to know we have a precious human life.
Como reconocer eso, ¿no?
Recognize that.
Y todos seres aman su preciosa vida, preciosa, ¿no?
All beings love their precious life.
Con condiciones favorables.
It's a favorable condition.
Eso primero es importante, tú reconocer y bien autorrespeto, ¿no?
So really, when we recognize, then this self-respect comes.
Eso es importante. Es como amor propio, fundamental.
And this self-love arises from that.
Y comienza desde uno primero, ¿no?
It really starts from the inside.
Porque nosotros no amamos nosotros mismos, ¿no?
Because we're not. So this is all starting from the inside. We don't love ourselves.
Porque no sentimos compasión, autocompasión,
we don't
¿no?
even feel self-compassion.
Por eso mucha gente autocrítica, autojuzgamiento y final hace mucho, ¿cómo se llama? Como mata uno mismo, ¿no?
So, I mean, it's getting pretty bad because, like, people don't have self-respect and there's so much self-criticism, even to the point where suicide rates are up so high now.
Todo eso, como la falta de amor.
This all has to do with a lack of love and respect.
Entonces, por eso nosotros comenzamos práctica principal, Lama cuando intro retiro.
So,
práctica vida humana.
So this is the primary practice to begin with. This is the first thing I began with when I went into 4-year retreat, is recognizing this precious human life.
¿No? Como yo tengo ese de condition potencial, ¿no?
I have this condition and I have this potential.
Entonces, cuando reconoce eso,
when we recognize that,
tú sientes como una motivación pura, ¿no?
We feel this
automotivación,
pure motivation and this like voluntary effort.
Yo le digo, por lo menos yo no voy a dañar ninguno seres, mí mismo o demás.
At the very least, I'm not going to harm others or myself.
¿Entendió? Entonces, por eso es importante, yo quiero practicar amor propio primero, amar.
And so, first of all, I think it's important to start with self-love.
¿Y amor dónde viene?
And where does that love come from?
Cuando tú reconoces bondad.
When you recognize the kindness.
Bondad de tú misma, bondad de tu madre, por favor.
Recognize your kindness. Recognize your parents' kindness, your mother's kindness.
Todos nos amamos, nuestros padres, madre, ¿no? Amamos,
we
¿no?
all love our family.
Un perrito ama al dueño. ¿Por qué ama?
Even the dog loves its owner. Why?
Porque él siente como bondad, realmente dando comida, me
Because
haciendo cariños,
they've
¿no?
given me care and they've given me food.
Y entonces realmente siente esa bondad, ¿no?
So we start to recognize this kindness.
Ahí viene amor, se llama.
And
Sentimiento,
then
amor.
this feeling of love
Se le
arises.
dice, y él quiere feliz.
And then
él
we
feliz,
think,
¿no?
oh, I want them to be happy too.
Y se llama amor, se llama amor.
That's
¿no?
called love.
Después ellos, algunos tienen problemas, cosas, es sentir compasión, ¿no?
And so when they have problems, then we automatically feel more
Oh,
compassion.
yo no gustaría sufrir,
I don't
¿no?
want them to suffer.
Quiere ayudar, liberar su sufrimiento, causa de sufrimiento,
I'd like
¿no?
to help them and I'd like to alleviate their suffering.
Y entonces, ella llama compasión, ¿no?
And so then that is compassion.
Y entonces, eso no se puede practicar día a día, una reflexión y
And
luego con la acción, ¿no?
so we can practice this by reflecting each day and then moving that into action.
Mejor autocompasión, dar 5 minutos de tu vida, una calma.
The
Yeah.
best compassion you can give to yourself is give yourself 5 minutes each day to be with yourself.
Compasión. Voy, 5 minutos voy a dar compasión, no sobre mi vida tanto, ¿no?
And every day for 5 minutes, I'm going to give myself compassion and a moment to not struggle.
Siente mi presencia.
I'm going to feel my presence.
Conecta a mi espacio sagrado
I'm going to
infinito.
connect to my sacred inner space.
Como regresa a mi tierra natal.
I'm going to
¿no?
return to my innate home.
Y entonces mi maestro dice, siempre regresa al corazón.
So my
Dice, ¿no?
teacher always says, come back to the heart.
Corazón es casa de la mente.
The heart is the home of the mind.
Cerebro, oficina de mente.
The brain is the office of the mind.
Cada vez nuestra mente sube la cerebro,
When the mind is there in the brain,
estresados,
We're
muchos
stressed.
pensamientos, ¿no? Miedos, ¿no?
we're fearful.
Cada vez regresamos, corazón haga,
And when
¿no?
we return here to the heart,
Tú sientes realmente como en la casa,
you really feel at home.
sientes de presencia de tu familia,
And
tus hijos,
You
¿no?
feel the presence of your children and family.
Eso uno requiere 5 minutos de respiración.
And this only requires 5 minutes of breath.
Eso. Y diariamente un proceso, no inmediatamente, ok, hoy medito 5 minutos, mañana yo ilumino, no puede
And
ser.
you have to be patient because you need to do it. It's the consistency that counts. You can't, just meditate 5 minutes today and tomorrow become enlightened. It's really about the consistency.
Porque Lama Dorje demoró 4 años como hacer quebrar algunos hábitos. Todavía por sí solo.
I went into retreat for 4 years and that was just breaking some habits and I'm still in the process going towards enlightenment.
¿No? Es un proceso,
It's
¿no?
a process.
Porque nuestro hábito muy profundo,
Our
tendencia, ¿no?
habits are so deep.
Como mente rígido, ¿no?
These tendencies are so deep and they're so
Sí.
rigid.
Por eso con la paciencia, compasión,
So we need
aceptación,
Patience and love and
y
acceptance.
va caminando con
And
eso,
there
¿no?
we go, there when in the path. Y pregunté cómo estado interno está reflejando en la parte externa.
Absolutamente. Por eso yo diciendo, esto mejoramos, primero Lama hablando,
So when we make this better,
naturalmente contagie. Yo la digo,
naturally we are contagious.
Contagie, porque bueno, yo sensación no frente Dalai Lama, porque yo he visto varias veces, ¿no?
So like, for example, the many times that I've met the Dalai Lama when I
No.
was in his presence.
Y yo he visto, claro, caso no solo budismo tibetano, Dalai Lama es considerado más importante, ¿no?
So like in Tibetan Buddhism, the Dalai Lama is considered extremely important.
Y él solo camina,
And if he just
Solo
walks
camina
in
frente
front of
tú.
you,
no hay pregunta, no viene pregunta.
if he just walks in front of you, your mind can't even come up with a question.
Satisfecho eso.
You're
satisfecho,
totally satisfied just
silencio,
to
todo.
see him. Your mind just goes silent
Porque su presencia,
just by his presence.
porque él está cambiado interno, ¿no?
Because he totally changed on the
Como su
inside.
vibra, como, ¿no? Energía
His
de amor, compasión,
vibration
¿no?
of love and compassion.
Eso nos siente impacta, ¿no?
You just feel, you
Mil
just
personas.
naturally feel the impact. Millions of people can feel it.
Eso llorando solo, eso en un momento, ¿no?
People
Emoción,
cry
¿no?
just seeing him.
Eso son de como un ejemplo, yo le
That's
digo, ¿no?
just like a very good example.
Por Lama Dorje hablo mucho, por ejemplo,
So, for example, Lama Dorje speaks a lot.
porque no tanto cambia como Dalai Lama, porque, ¿no?
I don't change people in the same way when Dalai Lama just walks
¿No?
past you.
¿Entendió? Eso es diferente, como uno está incorporado y no incorporado.
So
¿no?
that's the difference of when these teachings are fully embodied.
God, this is so beautiful. All of that dialogue, there's so much richness and depth. It's so incredibly textured with so many beautiful nuances. and so many different directions to go. So I'd like to touch on meditation at some point and recommendations for meditation and the concept of meditation for those who are intrigued with it, those who would like to adopt it and bring it into their lives. I also recognize that he mentioned that what's going on in the world right now, it's very tumultuous. There's a lot of turmoil. It's very intense and fast paced. And as technology improves and becomes more fast paced, we almost feel like we have to mirror it as human beings rather than just letting it do what it's designed to do. In a way, it's like humans are in competition with technology to some degree, that because technology can multitask at such a grand level, we almost feel like we should be able to do the same. And when he mentioned that there's a lot going on in terms of turmoil, I'm very curious, does he recognize the concept that is being widely spoken about, that the planet is shifting its consciousness and that there's a huge shift in human consciousness that is occurring at this time?
Primero, como claro, en realidad el mundo moderno lindos, ¿no? No, muchas cosas lindos.
It really, actually, the modern world's quite beautiful.
Y también yo les digo, yo amo tecnología, por supuesto,
I love
¿no?
technology.
Maravilloso.
It's so marvelous.
Pero depende de los usos.
It just depends on the use.
Y seguramente mucha gente no tiene control de tecnología, seguramente puede perder eso.
And if we don't have control over the way that we're using technology, we can get lost in it.
Y también puede influenciar como el ritmo de la tecnología, ¿verdad?
And the rhythm of technology can also influence us.
Incluso nosotros pensamos como esa manera, todo humano como sobre tecnología, como no tiene sentimientos, ¿cierto? Como tratamos.
It's like we kind of like you said, we're kind of like mirroring the technology and need to be at the same rhythm and without feelings almost.
Como tratamos como si fuera tecnología, ¿cierto?
We're like treating people like technology.
Como mucho acostumbrado a esa manera, ¿no?
It's like we're getting, our mind is getting so accustomed.
Entonces está sucediendo en realidad, ¿no?
And so, yeah, this is happening.
Entonces, como es importante, yo le digo, es importante cada uno, tecnología no control de nosotros controlamos de tecnología.
It's important for us to not let technology control us and for us to take, to have control and mindfulness over the technology.
Y puede usar cosas positivas.
You can utilize it in many positive ways.
Y nosotros como tecnología nos unimos acá, estamos juntos, hablando, ¿no?
Like, for example, technology is allowing us to gather here together.
Eso para uno beneficio.
And I think that's so beneficial.
El mensaje puede llegar infinitamente.
And this message can, be expanded infinitely.
Entonces, eso es importante como equilibrio, balancear, ¿no?
So I think it's very important for us to have this balance.
Y entonces, eso manejo de cada uno individual igual.
And so this is something that each one of us have to take responsibility for on an individual level.
Ya, eso es importante, ¿no?
Y la conciencia global que está mucho cambiando.
Ya, segundo, como mi pensamiento, claro, una velocidad general poco, como llama, rápidos, ¿cierto?
And you're right. There seems to be this kind of like increased velocity of change around the world.
Y también sucediendo muchas cosas de cierto diferentes maneras, ¿no? En la planeta Tierra, ¿cierto? Sucediendo muchas cosas, ¿cierto? Como enfermedad, algo cosa, nunca, ¿no?
Yeah, and there's like lots of things happening, like odd sicknesses and many different changes and things happening.
Ya. Y si quiere todo conectado con conciencia humanos.
It's all connected with human consciousness.
¿No? Entonces, eso, porque nosotros somos como llama, puede ser, ¿cómo llama? Célula de planeta Tierra, como si fuera.
Cellular.
Como célula.
Yeah.
Somos como células.
It's kind of like we're all cells of the planet.
Como si fuera, ¿no? Y eso puede influenciar afuera, ¿cierto?
And so we're all influencing that.
Entonces, eso cada uno realmente podemos más enfocamos mente positiva, una meditación eso puede hacer equilibrar con eso,
And
¿no?
so these changes that are happening, when we focus on meditation and focus on mindfulness, we can actually support this accelerated change to go in a good way.
Entonces yo quiero que todo depende dentro, yo siempre
And
digo,
all
¿no?
of it depends on the inside.
Entonces el mundo esperando cambio depende de nosotros interiores.
The whole world is waiting for change, but the change happens within us.
Entonces siempre sucedido, Dalai Lama dice, global, ¿cómo digo?
Global change is individual responsibility.
Global,
Cambio global.
cambio global y responsabilidad individual. Dice,
And
¿no?
His Holiness the Dalai Lama always says global change is an individual responsibility.
Ya, seguramente. Eso dentro de nuestra familia chiquitito puede mirar
We
eso,
can
¿no?
just start within our family.
Uno de las familias muy estresada, por ejemplo,
If you're a very stressed family,
toda familia estresada.
if you're stressed, you influence the stress of your whole family.
Uno de las familias como armonía, ¿no?
And whenever you bring
Amoroso,
harmony and
¿no?
love to your
Y
family,
toda familia relajada,
then your
bien,
family
¿no?
will be relaxed.
Primero, como eso no se puede mirar, ¿no?
So we have to look at that.
Y después es como la más grande, nuestro vecino.
And then
todo, ¿no?
little by little, we can influence more and more people.
Ya, eso creo.
That's beautiful. And it totally resonates with me. In my professional and personal practice, the inner work is the primary foundation. And it means the integrity and the accountability of taking responsibility for your energy, for your thoughts, for your language, and changing your inner environment so that you can change the world. You know, we hear so many people, especially what's going on in the world with wars and divisiveness and all the pain. So many people online are crying out loud at the despair of feeling like they can't create change, that the powers that be are just too big to be swayed. And there's this feeling of despair and feeling as though that we can't make a difference. So why try, right? And it reflects in terms of anger, and it reflects in terms of violence, and just an outlash, an outpour of these really intense emotions. And a lot of the inner work is about changing your inner environment, because as we take responsibility for this, we're literally changing the world, one person at a time.
Ya, y eso exactamente uno maestro dice, como llama maestro de Shantideva, ¿no?
That's exactly what the great master Shantideva
Y
said.
él dijo, imagina un mundo lleno de como pinos, como, ¿no?
Imagine a world full of thorns.
¿No? Y entonces, ¿cómo nos caminamos? Dice,
Then
¿no?
how can we walk?
Y entonces, no podemos cubrir porque es tan grande.
And I can't cover the world because
Como
it's too
un cuadro,
big.
¿no?
If I just try to cover the world with a leather or something so I could walk on it.
Entonces, más práctico, tal vez tú cubrirás tu pie.
The most practical thing is cover your own feet.
No sé, como dice, compra buenas zapatos.
Buy a good pair of shoes.
No, ¿cómo fuera eso significa, no? Y entonces yo también me comentado muchos amigos míos también como activista, ¿no? Como realmente ellos tienen eso, quieren cambiar, pero imposible a veces como la frutada, ¿no? Como,
And
¿no?
so, yeah, I have so many friends that are activists that feel so frustrated, like they want to help change things, but like feel so frustrated, like how can they actually do it?
Y entonces yo les digo, oye, por lo menos nosotros cuidamos nuestra rabia, ¿no?
At the very least, take care of your own anger.
Porque igual esa rabia, digo, aversión con esa persona, ¿no?
So-
Arreglando la rabia.
So,
fondo,
like,
¿no?
for example, in activism, there can be a lot of anger and aversion towards the other side.
Entonces, igual también hay como dualidad,
It's
¿cierto?
still the
Quiera, ¿no?
same duality. It's still the same poison that created the problem in the first place.
Por eso el Buda dice, fuego nunca puede apagar la fuego.
Fire can never put out fire,
Rabia no puede apagar la rabia.
and
¿no?
anger can never put out anger.
Entonces, lo mismo, repito, por eso, cambio de pasito, por lo menos yo voy a cambiar mi vida, yo no puedo controlar.
At the very least, I'm going to change my own life, and I'm not going to control.
Y eso mismo ayuda grande para el mundo.
And that is a huge help for the
Porque
world.
una persona menos participando es
one less person
negativo.
participating in negativity.
Entonces ayudo eso,
It
comienzo
helps.
ayudo.
It already starts to help.
Pero ainda no se nos da cuenta, está no ayudando nada, ¿no?
And so we don't even recognize, sometimes we can't even see that it's helpful.
¿No? Ayudando y como influencia propia familia primero, ¿no?
And so, but it's, I mean, it's even just starting to impact our own families. So it's really actually a huge help.
Recognizing that you're from the Drikung Kagyu lineage. Please correct me if my pronunciation is wrong. And so from this lineage, which I understand to be a very ancient lineage, that is a spoken lineage, there's a lot of history there. And I'm wondering if that lineage recognizes the transition of worlds or the transition of consciousness in humanity in terms of the future. Are there any markers or particular, bumps in the road of humanity that it recognizes to be a huge transition for the planet and for the people?
Ya, sí tiene varios potencias, ¿no? Como no. Y claro, nosotros linaje que llama Drikung Kagyu.
So of course, yeah, our lineage is called Drikung Kagyu.
Y Ka significa como la sabiduría oral experiencial.
And what it Ka means like the oral experiential wisdom.
Gyu significa continuidad sin interrupción como agua, ¿no?
And Gu means like the continuity or unbroken like a river.
Entonces todo ese maestro como linaje que hasta ahora no son linaje más o menos casi 40, como la casi 40
leaders.
Como líderes, ¿no?
Okay, so in our lineage, in this very specific leg of the lineage, we've had a lineage that's been unbroken for 40 leaders.
Experto, ¿no?
And they're completely enlightened beings.
No.
So yes, there has been kind of, if you want to use the word prophecy, there's been kind of foretold wisdom that the planet would go through a degeneration stage. And the degeneration stage occurs when the internal afflictions of the beings just start blossoming. They kind of go out of control.
¿No? Entonces ahí también esa manera afectada a nosotros vida también disminuye.
And so it actually starts to affect our lives and starts to decrease our lifespan.
Entonces ustedes sabiendo, no sé, mucha historia, como época de Buda, por ejemplo, más época de Buda incluso.
For example, 2,500 years ago and before that, in the time of the Buddha and before,
viviendo humano como 1000 años, humano.
Humans could actually live for 1,000 years. They had a lifespan of 1,000 years.
¿No? Después como pasando eso como negativo, ¿no?
And little by little with these afflictions or negativities,
y como disminuyó.
It actually decreases our lifespan.
Incluso algunos dicen antiguamente todo natural, ¿no? Que decía bene, comida, todo.
It's actually in the stories in the text that nature would just like be dripping with fruit and food. It was just kind of spontaneous. Anything that you needed was already there.
No hay aflicciones,
there,
¿no?
Because there wasn't afflictions.
Después el humano empezó poco de apego, yo quiero más engordar, ¿no?
And then the
mañana,
humans started having like attachments and the attachments like I want to save things for tomorrow.
Entonces como lazy, ¿no? Como la
and there was also kind of laziness that followed.
Como no buscar siempre.
So then we wouldn't go like each day go find our food. We were trying to save for later.
Poco a poco contaminó esa manera.
And these kind of things began to contaminate the mind.
Se llama degeneración.
And so we start there and from degeneration.
Entonces uno maestro preguntó, entonces posibilidad puede hacer la generación.
And a student asked the master, is it possible to change this degeneration stage?
Sí, sí, depende dentro.
And he said, yes, but it depends on the inside.
Si todos nosotros cambiamos,
if all of us change,
naturalmente va nuestra larga vida.
Then naturally we'll have a longer life.
Y la tierra va a cambiar.
And the earth itself will change.
Ya porque por la lluvia o no sé, todo equilibra, ¿no?
The earth's certainly responding right now to this conversation.
Ya. Entonces yo quiero que todo dentro.
So I think that everything is really coming from the inside.
Porque yo soy un comentario, yo como de Himalaya, ¿no? Muy tradicional.
So I'm from the Himalayas, like a very traditional indigenous community of the Himalayas.
Y nosotros tenemos bien conexión con la naturaleza.
And we're so connected with nature.
Incluso algunas tiene comunicación con la naturaleza,
And
¿no?
some have communication with nature.
Entonces, ¿no? Entonces nosotros como solo dependen de como la lluvia, como nosotros crece la planta.
And so it just really depends, like we all depend on the rain, of course, for growing the plants.
Y nosotros hacemos alguna ceremonia como cultural, ¿no?
And we would do like a cultural ceremony.
Como manera de hacer como la cosa, ¿cierto? Como la conecta con la
And we
naturaleza.
would connect with nature.
Realmente la naturaleza responde inmediato.
And then nature would respond immediately.
Quiere nacer lluvia, lluvia ahora.
If we needed rain, it would rain.
Oh, no quiero lluvia ahora, otra ceremonia, no lluvia.
If we don't need rain, we would ask for it not to have rain and it would stop.
Porque eso significa mucho confianza tener, ¿no? Como, ¿no?
Because there was so much trust between humans and
Y
nature.
nosotros respetamos demasiado con la naturaleza,
And
¿no?
we just had so much respect for
Y
nature.
naturaleza cuida a nosotros.
So then nature takes care of us.
Entonces, eso yo tuve una experiencia en la cuando yo vivo en la Himalaya, ¿no?
And I really felt this experience when I lived in the Himalayas.
Entonces, ahora, hoy día, poco perdiendo ese valor, ¿cierto?
And now we're all kind of losing this value and connection.
Yo quiero todo indígena tener ese desafío.
I know that all indigenous tribes have this
Cómo
wisdom,
se comunicar con la naturaleza,
how to
¿no?
communicate with nature.
Ya, eso yo diciendo siguiente, pureza viene de dentro.
So really the purity comes from the inside.
You mentioned the 5 poisons, and I feel like we are living in a time of the great confusion, one of the poisons that you mentioned. Such a confusion, so confused about ourselves, confused about our relationship with nature, confused about our relationship with self and others, that it has created contrast, immense contrast, division. It has caused war. It has caused separation from Earth in recognizing it as our mother, as the provider. It provides us literally with everything we need to live. And the amount of conflict that we cause it for the sake of the illusion of wealth and abundance, when abundance surrounds us everywhere we are, and the less conflict that we have with Mother Nature, abundance is even more resourced and even more available. So we're literally compromising ourselves and compromising our lives and our ability to connect with one another and with the planet.
Absolutely. Porque pobreza de dentro, ¿no?
Because
Pobreza, ¿no?
poverty is actually on the inside.
¿No? Como nosotros como miserable, como apego, ¿cierto?
When we have that kind of like miserliness or like this miserableness in general too, this is coming from our own state of mind.
Como si fuera una persona tiene mucho sed, por ejemplo.
For example, somebody's very thirsty
Tomando agua salada.
and drinking
salada.
salty water.
Nunca va a quitarse.
They will never get, satiate their thirst.
Quieren más.
You want more and more.
Como deseo descontrolado,
It's
¿no?
called uncontrollable desire.
Porque no siente abundancia,
Because
nunca.
then you don't feel ever abundant.
Porque cuando tú tienes una mente abierta, ¿no?
When your mind is open
Como amor,
with love,
lleno de compasión.
full of compassion.
Tú sientes como incluso tomando agua, sientes abundancia, ¿no?
And so especially like when you drink water, then even drinking clean water, like you just feel so abundant.
Entonces, por eso está la abundancia dentro.
And so really abundance comes from the inside.
That just made me reflect on, when you said we satiate that desire that expresses itself through thirst. And I just had like this feeling and kind of vision of our culture and how much it exercises the desire of sex and intimacy. And it's so insatiable in a way that it's oozed in dynamics, it's oozed out in pop culture on TV, it's oozed out through porn, through video games, like this perversion of intimacy that has, swung the pendulum swing all the way to the opposite end of the spectrum, to being something that's beautiful and about connection, to something that's actually about separateness and is about the ego and is about control and mine and wanting to have. And it's just an incredibly odd thing to witness when you actually separate yourself from the culture and observe it's, you know, this insatiable desire expresses itself in so many areas of our lives. So, recognizing that we are kind of getting up there in terms of time, there's so much more that I do want to unpack with you regarding the foundation, regarding the retreat center in Costa Rica, as well as philosophies and teachings and meditations in how to access the Lama and his numerous in numerous ways. I'd like to break this up into a 2-part series. So I'd like to bring this to a close unless there's something that you feel called to speak to regarding any of the topics, or something that we haven't even reached on that you feel really called to express and to elaborate on. And then we'll close this, and we'll come right back and do a 2nd-part series.
En realidad no tengo mucho. Más importante, yo mis propios como sentimientos, y todos nosotros sentimos como familia, es importante, ¿no?
Yeah, he said, I don't really have so much more to say, but in general, I think it's extremely important that we all feel like family.
Y como cada uno nosotros podemos hacer como la atención plena, uno practicando individually, ¿no?
And it's
Y
so,
5 minutos la más dicho, ¿no?
and as I mentioned, I think it's so important that we practice mindfulness and gift ourselves 5 minutes a day at least.
Como organizar los tiempos, ¿no?
Organize your time.
Pero no necesariamente meditation, yo voy sentado, no necesariamente. Meditation puede acción cuando conversando personas, y cuando trabaja en la oficina, y también cocinando, lavar losa, todo meditation. Solo requiere tu atención plena.
Meditation doesn't mean just sitting. It means meditating as you speak to another person. Meditate as you work. Meditate as you wash your plates. Meditate in any action that you do. Bring your mindfulness there.
¿Y cómo trae como mindfulness?
And how do we bring our mindfulness?
Solo tú das cuenta tu respiración normal.
Acknowledge your breath.
Estoy respirando yo.
Am I breathing right
Y
now?
significa contigo presencia.
If you're breathing right now, then your consciousness is with you.
Esa es una mejor manera nosotros vida poco agitado, ¿no?
This is actually one of the best ways to calm an agitated
Y
life.
pensa positivo.
And then bring your mind into positive thinking.
Eso es muy simple, ¿no? Eso.
I'm glad that you circled back around to meditation, because I'd love to maybe offer some parts of the technique to support people, because often what I hear is a great deal of difficulty for beginners, or even people who are a year or two in their practices, who are really wanting to delve deeper into it. And so for beginners or intermediates, is there something that you can recommend and offer to meditators to support them in getting everything that they can from the act?
Por supuesto. Y nosotros tenemos lunes meditation normalmente. No
He
sé,
said
uno.
one thing that I can share with you is that every Monday we offer like a meditation
Como
Monday.
online, cualquier
And
lugar,
it's
¿no?
online from anywhere, wherever you are, you can join.
Es un grupal meditation que también ayuda.
It's a group meditation and it's very helpful.
Si alguien no puede eso,
And if you can't do that,
y puede hacer uno muy simple de meditation, no piensa quitar la mente blanco.
he said, but just in general, I'll share with you a technique that when you sit to meditate, the goal is not to make your mind blank.
No. Entonces, simplemente tú necesitas mente calma, tranquilidad.
Just bring yourself into a calm space.
Y también alguien se gusta mirar un objeto.
It can be helpful if you bring a sacred object in front of your...
Mantras no se utilizan muchos.
You can use a visual object in front of you, like an object, or sometimes you can even use a mantra.
Como sonidos.
Like an object of sound.
Como eso, ¿no? Y entonces, eso como tu mente estará enfocando con la respiración o objetos.
So bring your mind to focus on the object that you chose.
Y entonces comienza 5 minutos.
And start with 5 minutes.
Ese yo creo que ayuda mucho,
And
¿no?
it's very helpful.
Entonces, eso es una opción.
Yeah, and again, just to elaborate on that a little bit, the idea is, again, not to make your mind have no thoughts. The idea is to keep training your mind like a baby, like bring the attention back. We remember, let's say we put a Buddha in front of us, or a candle. You bring your mind to the candle, and then you start thinking about your strawberry shake that you had, and it was so delicious, and then bring it back. And then, oh yeah, tomorrow I need to go do this at the shopping list. Oh, just bring it back. And then over time, the reason why consistency is so important is because over time, the consistency, the mind will just start to relax and be able to stay with the object a lot longer. But it just requires patience, and it just requires just gently bringing the baby's attention back and bringing it back. And then also, every time you finish, provoking a sense of joy. I'm so happy I took this time to do this. Whether I consider it a successful meditation or not a successful meditation does not matter. The fact that I sat down to do it, that consistency is what trains the muscle. And so you're also provoking a sense of joy. It means you have a positive association with the meditation every time. And so the more positive association you have with trying to do it, you're also going to keep coming back to it, and you won't just quit. And so those are very, very important techniques. And I think we'll share with you on the next episode, but we're also actually going to be sharing an online course soon that's a step-by-step practice of starting from the very beginning of meditation until like the most kind of maximum meditation of Mahamudra that you can do in Buddhism. So we're actually be doing an online course soon about that, and we can share more about that with you.
Oh man, beautiful. Thank you so much. And I'm really grateful that you shared those tidbits of information to help the viewers in their meditation practices. So I want to thank you. I'm so incredibly grateful and so appreciative to have been able to have this conversation and to connect with you today. And I'm looking forward to continuing this conversation for part 2. And I'm really excited to hear what the viewers have to say about this experience. So thank you kindly. It was a pleasure. And I'll see you in the next episode.
Nos vemos.
See you later.